Hello, good evening, and happy Pride season for San Diego. My name is Fernando López. I have they, them, their pronouns. I'm the executive director of San Diego Pride, and thank you for joining us this evening. What an incredible production that we just were able to watch through Breakthrough Workshop Theater, which is one of San Diego Pride's grantees for the last several years. And it's my pleasure to introduce Ira Bauer-Spector, Patricia Loughrey, and Thomas Hodges, who were all involved in the making of this production. Hi.
Hello, hello.
It's so great to see you.
Hi, Fernando. Hi, Ira.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Thomas.
I want to hug you all so much after watching that. Virtual hugs.
That's right.
And Patty, do we call you Patty? This is my first time actually meeting you, or Patricia.
Oh, either's fine. Yeah. It's lovely to meet you. Thanks for this chance to celebrate with you.
Well, thank you so much. You made me cry. I think all of you did at some point in the show. So thank you so much for everything.
That's Ira's specialty.
Well, I do what I can.
Well, we appreciate it. And I'm waiting for Thomas to start composing and playing all throughout this Q&A.
We'll see what happens. A little.
Don't tempt him. He may start.
Well, thank you again for joining us. We have some questions for you, and just incredible work, and what an inspiring piece of theater and a documentary that you produced. I'm sure we're all learning and adapting, and you've done an incredible job, an inspiring job. And so, Ira, the first question is actually for you. So, what was the inspiration for creating the Stories of Dear Harvey?
Yeah, well, this is a play. We've done Dear Harvey, as you saw in the film, from the very, very beginning of our company. It was project number one. And, we were really among so many of the other disappointments that have come out throughout this challenging period of our lives. Patty reached out and talked about potentially doing a virtual experience for Dear Harvey. And it just kind of led into some other conversations. She said, well, maybe there could be a different version you could do that could incorporate some of BWT's stories. And then that just evolved into conversations, figuring out how we could sort of, with our bandwidth, how we could tell this story in the most effective way possible, and how we could honor Dan's legacy, which was really important to all of us. And so it just, it morphed into this new creation, and it has become the Stories of Dear Harvey. And we're very proud of the film and grateful to all of the artists who participated. There were 24 of us, all of our little individual Zoom sessions and all that. And it's just been a really inspiring project to have during this time. So,
well, that's quite the bandwidth you have there.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't easy. So the next question is also still for you, Ira. There are countless plays out there, and as a founding artistic director of Breakthrough Workshop Theater, why have you chosen to produce the Stories of Dear Harvey, or the Stories of Dear Harvey, as an annual project? And what has BTW done to keep it relevant year after year?
That's great. I think just sort of logistically, just from that standpoint, Dear Harvey is the perfect play to do for BWT, because, sort of like Vagina Monologues or Laramie Project or things like that, it is monologue based. And since our process is so individualized in many ways, it's a great opportunity for the artists to be able to work on that script independently. And then in our short time, we can really sort of put the pieces together. So sort of logistically, it's great. Obviously, thematically, Harvey is definitely a breakthrough in many ways, you could say. And it's also a great play for all different levels. If you're a more experienced actor, you can really dive deep into this material. If you're brand new and you just focus on the words and say them, that can be enough for a play like this. And so it's just, that's been really quite wonderful. And, it's interesting because when you have, when you're dealing with an annual tradition and you're doing the same piece over and over and over again, I think, sometimes I'll say there have been times over the years that I've thought, oh, maybe we can retire this one, or, whatever. And a story I sort of share of that time is that almost happened in 2015. I was planning the season, and I was just like, I was on such a high from the Supreme Court marriage equality ruling, and I was like, we won. Maybe we don't need this anymore. Like, let's retire it. And then I was like, no, let's keep doing it. And we decided to do it the following year with the all youth cast. And we were like, oh, we'll do it from a different angle. And then 2 weeks before that reading was the Pulse nightclub shooting. And it was just working on this piece with kids during that particular moment. It was just, as much as we were celebrating, because as Katie mentioned in the film, it was also or Terry mentioned in the film, it was also on the 1 year anniversary of that ruling. It was a reminder that this play is just as relevant as it has always been. And we continue to have this need. And especially now, given our current leadership, I think messages of hope and love are needed more than ever. So we just keep doing it year after year. We've had an all-female version. We've had an all-youth production. It's a really special piece for us. So we're just going to keep doing it.
Well, and I absolutely love, I'm a theater kid too. I went to Southwest Academy for Visual and Performing Arts. And so I love everything about it. And I love what Breakthrough Workshop Theater stands for. And I really appreciate the age blind and gender blind and color blind casting that really allows everyone to participate. I think that really came through in the documentary as well.
Well, Fernando, when people tell me that they have theater pass, that usually involves me like eventually getting them to come and join us for a weekend. Because all it takes is a weekend. All it is 3 days. These two, everyone knows if you mention, oh, I used to do theater 10 years ago, I'll get you back.
All right.
It's just a weekend, so watch out for that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, you heard it. It's here. He said he's down.
So thank you so much, Ira. Patty, the next question is for you. So in the film, we learned a lot about Dan Kirsch and that he received the HRC Award in North Carolina, the North Carolina Pioneer of the Year Award in 2017. But we also know that that same year, the Celebration Theater in LA gave you the Chuck Rowland Award for your contributions to LGBTQ theater. So one, just thank you for your incredible work. I mean, all of this has been inspiring, and I loved hearing your words. And so what piece of advice would you give to a young LGBTQ writer as they sit down to write? And you were given words of encouragement, I'm sure, along the way. So what would you pass along to the next writer?
Yeah, it's a great question. And if you're watching this now, or you're watching this in the archive and you're a writer, you haven't told anybody yet, or you kind of haven't told yourself yet that you're a writer, you're a writer. If you've lived and you have a story, you have stories inside you, you've seen stories, there are things that come to you in the night and it kind of burns in you and you think, what do I do with this? Grab your laptop, grab your pen and write. And for me, I have a lot of negative feedback in my mind when I write. So find a way to just move around that and keep going anyway. Sometimes when the voice is saying, this has been done, I just surrender and I say, I know it's been done. I'm just gonna put it on the page one more time. Like, just keep yourself moving. And then one of the other sort of negative voices that I get is that, my story doesn't matter. My perspective doesn't matter. And so I'll give you the words that Harvey gave to Stewart, and you heard them in the play, that you are the medicine that the world needs. And if you are a little bit different, it just means that the medicine that you're bringing is a little bit more rare and we need it even more. And like, tuck that in your pocket and just keep going. And then the last thing, and I get this every time I watch, Ira's amazing film, is find your Dan Kirsch. And it doesn't mean that this person has to be a producer of theater, but this person has to be the kind of person that when you read a first draft to them or that first monologue, this person says, oh my God, I can't believe you wrote that. That's so amazing. Like, find that person and read your work to that person first. Don't, and take it from me, I've done this. Don't take it to that critical person. And remember when Cleve talks about, like the naysayer who always finds the picky little reason why it won't work. Don't take it to that person first. You know who those people are, and they're good for other moments in your life. And and then find a question that burns in you that you don't know the answer to. When Thomas and I started working on this play, we didn't know anything about Harvey. I remember, San Diego, you're lucky. You have a park bench in Balboa Park that's dedicated to Harvey. And Thomas and I went to find this bench. Like, we're like, where is evidence of Harvey? And we sat on the bench together, and we took the journey together. You don't have to know at the beginning. You just have to keep going. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And what you said in the documentary about that you didn't believe in yourself until Dan did, and it so often takes that person. And I hear that so often, and as I've been reflecting in all the things that we've had to adapt, remembering that and the folks who believed in me along the way. There was a similar person who once told me I was so terrified to get up and talk about our story. And I think as LGBTQ folks, as marginalized folks, we're told our whole lives that our stories don't matter and don't have worth. And so how do you break through that? And the person told me, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be an expert in yourself and your story. And then
that's beautiful.
And I think whether it's our movement or any other movement from a marginalized community, we know over and over again, history teaches us that it is our stories, our personal stories, that move hearts and minds. And in this day and age, that's what shifts policy. And that's why the work that you're doing, Patty, and all of you is so important, because you're changing those hearts and minds, and you're giving folks the opportunity to have somebody who believes in them. And I'm sure you are the Dan to a lot of people.
Thanks, Fernando. I should be so lucky to, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Patty. The next question is for Thomas. So in the Stories of Dear Harvey, your letter to Harvey has always seemed like to represent the next generation. And you've evolved into a different role over these years since writing that original letter. And so now you're speaking from this whole new perspective. And that's, I think, this whole project really is an intergenerational project, right? And now you're in a different position. This whole project in you is all breakthrough workshop theater. Everything about it is intergenerational. And so I think, Pierre shared a really powerful message at the end. And I just wondered, the question was, what do you think it is about specifically this play that resonates with young people? And I'm also interested in hearing what that intergenerational role is and how you see yourself as part of it.
Yeah. I think that it's so interesting, this play, starting so young with it and then being where I am now. And I think young people need someone like them to look up to, and to be role models, even if they aren't alive when they learn about them. I think there's something about knowing that someone was fighting for you that it's like passing the baton. You have to keep going. You have to carry that fight. I also think young people know the truth of life more than anyone else. They're excited about life. They're ready to take it by the horns. They have hope. They have so much hope. And I think sometimes people, we get used to things, and it's not that we lose hope, but we lose the fire sometimes, and we have to be reminded of it. And I think that intergenerational relationship continues. I think we have to be reminded growing up of our youth. And that's a special gift that the show has brought me, I think. Hearing that letter again, and how have I changed? Some for the better, some not for the better. But always looking at how can I shift? How can I be better? I also think what's great about this play is it shows the ripple effect of living your life and being authentic and standing naked and being yourself and trying. Harvey Milk, the fact that he tried so hard and he knew what he was up against. He was very aware that there were death threats, but he did not stop. His life had a ripple effect. And that's what this play is about, which is so special. the people that he affected changed the world too. I think about Cleve Jones and his bullhorn, and just to the extent of the people that put up Jay Farnsworth Jr., to that one person, that Cleve remembers that, and that pushed him, that our lives, to the smallest degree, to the smallest action, create change, and it can never be, that can never be diminished. And that's what I love so much about the show is it, Pierre's letter at the end, it's so beautiful how you crafted that. It lands, Dear Dan. Dear Dan. Dan was, Dan's spirit was Harvey's spirit. And I think that ripple effect continues, and it won't stop. It can't stop. And that's what I love so much about this piece is it's a call to action, and a call to be authentic.
I love that. And I think, as much as this whole creation of Dear Harvey was a love letter in many ways, Dear Harvey, this production was a love letter to Dan. And I know that through this production and through the work of Breakthrough, you all, there's gonna be people writing love letters to you one day about how much you've changed and impacted their lives. And as much as our young generation, the new generation who's so motivated and engaged, they're relighting our fire in a lot of ways. And I feel that, and I see that when we're watching this and being connected in that way. We're, like you said, we're letting them know that we were fighting for them before they got here. And they are that reminder for us sometimes, and help us remember that's why we were fighting in the first place, and that's why we're still fighting. So I just love seeing all of that, and just congratulations to everything that you all have put forward for the generations that came before us and the generations that are fighting alongside us now.
Thank you.
The next questions are any of you can answer these. So what are some of the other Harvey Milk connections to San Diego that you're aware? Obviously, this is a very San Diego centric production. Anyone can take
That's a great question. I don't know if Harvey visited San Diego when he was touring the state of California to fight the Briggs Initiative in '77. I don't know. He might have. And if you're out there and let us know in the live comments, because there are undoubtedly people watching, although as the years pass, there are fewer and fewer people who knew Harvey. But I think Harvey's very much alive in San Diego right now. So many of you probably know that it was mentioned in the film that it was this last December that the first 100 tons of steel were cut for the USNS Harvey Milk, which will be one of 6 they're oiler replenishment ships. So they're not actually warships, but they will be replenishing ships in the U.S. Navy. That are named, it's the John Lewis fleet of ships, and there are 6 of them, one for Sojourner Truth, one for Earl Warren, and the USNS Harvey Milk, and it's being built in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, the Milk Foundation was consulted with where they want this particular ship to be kind of doing its work. And Stewart and the foundation really lobbied for a global map for it, and they've actually received communications from people who are living in countries where it's punishable by death to be gay, saying we are waiting to see the ship come into our port. So I think whatever Harvey brought in is very much alive, and the other way that he's super alive in San Diego is through the Imperial Court and Nicole Marie Ramirez, who, I don't know if you can see, I have this little button on this, Harvey. Oh, yeah. If you've ever been to an event with Nicole, like the Diversity Breakfast or anything honoring Harvey, Nicole carries around a little baggie of these buttons. Nicole is a huge champion. And the letter writing campaign to bring the postage stamp of Harvey to the U.S. Postal, to get that approved, was hugely supported through the Imperial Court coming out of San Diego. So I don't know if he was there, but I feel like he really is there now with the work that you all are doing.
Yeah.
We also have the first street named after Harvey Milk in the nation, Harvey Milk in Hillcrest, and even just to there you go, right there, there you are, see, exactly. And just to sort of follow up on Patty's point before, the bench in Balboa Park, if you haven't had a chance to stop by there, I know Balboa Park's my favorite place in San Diego. I love it. And back in 2009, when I was working on an internship at the Old Globe, I had a lot of free time in between shows or before rehearsal on breaks, and I actually stumbled upon the Harvey Milk bench by accident. And it was just a wonderful moment. It felt like home in such a profound way, and we continue to do it. Look, Thomas and I this year, we had a meeting in January for a show we were doing, or maybe it was last fall actually, The Things We Never Say, and I had him meet me in Balboa Park, and we were like, where should we meet? And we met at the Harvey Milk bench. So it seems to be a common thread here among this chat, but that's a place you can always go and connect to Harvey here in San Diego.
You know what's interesting about that? When Thomas and I went looking for the bench just at the very beginning of the writing project. The moment we found it, we sat there and talked for a while. And as we walked away, the park was different to me because it was now my park. And I think that's what Harvey did and Dan did, is make these spaces for us. It's literal. It was energetic. I felt like, oh, I'm in my park now, instead of visiting the hetero Balboa Park. You know, they're friendly, but it's not mine. And for me, I take that even one step further. That actually helped solidify this town as my hometown. Because, I had been in grad school for a year. I'm not from California. I don't like the beach. I don't like to surf. I don't like In-N-Out Burger. Like, I'm not from here. That's not my thing. And Balboa Park, all of a sudden it was this unique thing. And it was that summer that I say that Balboa Park made San Diego feel like home to me. And it was definitely, moments like finding that bench and feeling that connection that, as then I continued to grow and learn and to see what the community and get more involved with San Diego Pride and all that this really became my home in part because of that. So, and can I give a shout out right now to San Diego Pride for these community grants that you give? Yeah. Those are critical. I mean, because as Thomas was talking about, it's just these small moments. So $1,000 grant to somebody, $500 grant. It's more than the money. It's saying, we need what you're doing. We need what you're saying, and we're standing behind you. And, those sources are not plentiful. So salutes to you guys.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And what's kind of interesting is, so Christine Kehoe, who's in the play, right? She's actually one of the people who first she was involved with San Diego Pride in the 80s and onward. And she was actually the person who helped with the other board members at the time to envision a model of Pride that could actually turn a profit and give those profits back out to the community. And so we actually at San Diego Pride are the most philanthropic Pride in the world. And we've given out more than $3 million since 1994 to LGBT serving organizations. And it was that work in 89, I think, is when she was the board co-chair. And since then, we've become a year-round education and advocacy organization. And so projects like what you're talking about from, I was there when they laid the steel. That was definitely, with the Imperial Court, Nicole Ramirez leading that charge. But for Harvey Milk Street, that was a coalition of folks, but San Diego Pride was the organization that did all the paperwork and got all the signatures and did all the administrative stuff to actually make a street. And that was one of the first big projects that I took on here when I was brought on to San Diego Pride 9 years ago. We started about June or July, just after Pride, 9 years ago to get that street renamed in Hillcrest for Harvey Milk.
Amazing.
Wow. That's just so critical for someone who's young and may not have a place for themselves yet. Like sometimes, and I look at my life, sometimes I just needed a little bit of air that was just for me. And then I could go on for another year or 2 years, before I could really find my feet and find my people.
Yeah. And I get the part about the bench too, and having it felt different. Like I remember when the they first unveiled the street sign, and it was just like, oh, Hillcrest was already home, but it felt like we're being acknowledged by the city that says, you are here, this is yours. And every time I walk past the Harvey Milk Street sign, I smile.
Oh, that's so special.
So the next question is also for any of you. What's something that you learned about Harvey Milk over the years that was surprising?
Well, I have a good one. There's a story that's in the original Dear Harvey that we had to cut just for time and thematically, so we didn't get to share it, but I'll share it here. And that's Harvey had connections to Broadway. And if you actually go to IBDB, Internet Broadway Database, right now and type in Harvey Milk, you'll see that he has 3 Broadway credits, including he was the original assistant to the director and helped produce the original production of Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway. And that's something that totally blew me away when I first heard it. I think it has just reinforced the power of this particular play, because Harvey specifically not only was a fan of theater, he not only appreciated it, but he was one of us. He knew the power that theater and art could have to change lives, to transform people, and he invested his time and energy into this field. I mean, 3 Broadway credits, that's time and energy and effort. He understood it. And so I think that this is such a beautiful tool to use to educate, because he would be, I think, fully in support of something like this. So that was always something, it's the theater geek in me, but I love it.
I learned something new.
Yeah, I love it.
Anybody else? Tom?
I was thinking, actually, that was what I was thinking about. One of the things that led me to was his ability to be so connected to people and talk to them. I don't think it's an accident he had a theater background, and that's where it led him to that next stage, to the political stage, because I think it helped him immensely. And so it's not that something I discovered, but just something I thought about. I've been thinking about quite a bit, was his time in New York, his time with Broadway shows and performers. What did that do for his campaigns? How did that inform him?
Well, that particular show, Stuart Milk, as you met him in the show, and he's a global activist that carries on the work, really fighting for all of us on the planet. And he tells a story that was his first Broadway show. He was not out to Harvey. He was sort of wrestling within himself, living in Long Island, and he came in with his mom to see the show, adored it, of course. But that night after the show, they were talking, and Harvey used the show and the story of Christ to talk about that kind of love, and the level of intolerance that has to destroy the other, which is also evident in that show. And so I think, and Stuart said that Harvey watched the show night after night after night, like more than anyone else. And he was, and through Stuart's view, Harvey was thinking about, what does it take to create a change? And I think of those moments, and I'm not equating Harvey with Christ here. But Harvey knew that he was, he left that will, he left a political will, a recorded will saying, in the event of my assassination, this is what I want the movement to do. And you see him writing, the picture of the play, he's up on this convertible and his heart is open, and he's been counseled to wear a bulletproof vest and he won't do it. The idea that somebody has to be the tip of the arrow. And I think Harvey was that in some ways for us. Somebody has to go first, and often that person, that act of going first, it ends their life. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen that all too often with too many civil rights leaders, social justice leaders, or folks who are at the front leading edge of policy reform for marginalized communities. Often are the most targeted, right? Because there's something you're fighting, and that can makes you vulnerable, and that it requires bravery and courage and all the different ways that we do that and tell those stories with hope and hope that we're going to do something different, that we're going to change the world. And I think Harvey gave us a lot of that hope.
Mm-hmm.
The next question I have is, what part of Harvey's legacy has taken on particular significance to you this year?
Oh.
And this is for anybody who wants to start. Patty, you want to start?
Oh, I think what we were just talking about, I feel like I see that kind of bravery every night on the news right now. Yeah,
I think there's something about his call for people. But I think about what coming out meant, like come out, you know, when he was saying that back then, and how dangerous that was. And how it, you know, those conversations with I think there's something about that immediacy of like, there's no waiting on the sidelines anymore. That can't be something that we do if everyone is going to be working together to create change. No one can sit on the sidelines. We have to be the face, we have to be forward, and we have to take risks. And that's really been resonating with me the last couple months.
You know, I think for me, you know, 2020, I mean, what a year, right? And, you know, I think, you know, even before like this whole like conglomeration of current events that just keep our heads spinning every day, you know, before this last year, about a year ago, I was picking this season, and I actually, knowing it was going to be an election year and knowing that was going to create a lot of sort of additional tension in the world, I actually developed a unifying theme for our whole season this year. And this was our 8th year of doing it, and I had never done a season theme before. But the theme we chose for this year is the journey around 3 words: grief, empathy, hope. And so all of our pieces did that. And, you know, at the time I had no idea like how shockingly relevant and personal those things would become, because we're all grieving right now, right? We're all grieving in one way or another. We're grieving the lives that have been lost from the pandemic. We're grieving, you know, the opportunities that have been lost from the pandemic. We're all collectively grieving the Black lives and the Black trans lives that are just cut so tragically short in this system that continues to seem to keep failing the people that we love so much in our lives. And it's all just so overwhelming at times, right? I'm sure it's overwhelming for the 3 of you. It's overwhelming for everyone watching this. And it can just get so inconceivable how to even wrap our heads around it. But at the time last year when I was thinking about this, developing it before any of this happened, I felt that this was true, what I'm about to say, and I think it's even more true now. And that is, when we're dealing with grief, I think the best way to move through that grief is walking alongside a path of empathy. You know, we have to listen to each other. We have to build bridges amongst our communities instead of figuring out more walls that we can put up between us. We need to amplify voices that need to be amplified. And I just, you know, I think all of that, that's what Harvey was trying to do in 1978. And I think that's the work that we're trying to continue now. And when I look back at this year, I will say that when I look at those 3 words, I know that my understanding of grief is a lot more in depth. I know that my dedication to seeking empathy with life experiences that are completely unlike my own has grown. And believe it or not, even with everything going on, because of the empathy that we're exploring through this work, I have more hope than I ever have had before. Even with everything going on, I have more hope. And so to you know, this theme wasn't what I intended it to be, but it has actually grown and taken on more meaning and more urgency. And it enhances all the work, including Dear Harvey. So, you know, this has been a very challenging time, but I think there are a lot of silver linings, and this piece for us has been one of those shining lights in a dark time. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm trying not to cry while you were talking. Oh, and just It's interesting to hear you say that from our position here at Pride, because every year we're charged with creating a theme for not just the event itself, but really the theme that carries us through all of our work all year round. And when the team here was trying to figure out what our theme was going to be for this year, we looked at the year ahead and how divided things were becoming. We were looking at the increase in anti-Semitic violence, in xenophobic violence, in the murder of Black trans women, and in the increase in highlighting how law enforcement were still killing innocent Black lives. And we decided that with this country that was so divided, that our theme for this year would be Together We Rise, and really an approach to intersectional social justice work. And I think watching Dear Harvey and being reminded of these stories and how intersectional Harvey's approach really was to everything, and that we've known for a long time that if we're going to have liberty and justice for all, we actually need to all work together in that. And so whether it's your theme or our theme, they're connected, and that's our Together We Rise. So I just really appreciated hearing you say that. And so, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. The next question is, do you have an anecdote about Dan Kirsch that maybe didn't make it into the film that you would like to share?
Dan always, this is something I loved about Dan. He'd always make sure I had a cookie after dinner or cake. He's like, what are we having for dessert? So that's just, I don't know why that just came to mind, but it
yeah.
He was always to worry about your self-care.
What was that?
Someone has to worry about your self-care.
Yeah. So, and it was always a guilt-free cookie. He was like, "You need your cookie, you gotta have it." So, yeah, you're right. Okay. So that's something that I just personally loved about Dan. One of the many.
He was a brownie connoisseur. It was funny, when the first in the first drafts of Dear Harvey, he really kind of grabbed onto. He's like, Harvey had a sweet tooth, because the Cronenberg talks about the sweet rolls of Harvey. Dan's like, Harvey had a sweet tooth. I'm like, yes, he did. You have one too. Yeah, brownies. There's something I'll tell your viewers. We had I worked with Dan at Diversionary in the literary office, and we had a playwright who kept sending in plays that were that weren't right for us to produce. He was in his 70s, maybe his 80s at the time we met him. His name was Phil Burns. And through a series of events, he was homebound. He had a terrible back injury, and but Dan and Phil became really good friends, and they drive up to Temecula where Phil lived. And Phil, to ease the pain that really would come on heavy, like at 4 a.m, Phil would draw an egg every day. He had, in art school, he had been given this suggestion. And they are extraordinary and beautiful. And there are thousands of these. And he gave them to Dan. And Dan has a website. Dan had a website. The website exists. It's Phil Burns, PhilBurns, egg art. And so I told Dan tonight that I was going to tell you all to go take a look at this art, because it's beautiful, and it's just some of the sweetness that came off the kind of relationships that Dan built with people.
I wrote it down. I'm going to look at it later.
Good. I'm glad.
To tie that, first of all, we were doing one more screening of this film on July 12th. And then after that, a bunch of us artists are getting together to do one of these live events, but we're going to share stories about Dan and how he impacted us as an artist. So if you want to tune in for that to hear some more anecdotes from not just the three of us, but from some others, that'll be happening. But mine, I actually, the year after I did Dear Harvey with the Fringe, Dan hired me to do the social media for the whole year for Diversionary, and I did that. He also hired me to catalog a bunch of the egg portraits as well, do some of that. So I was part of that as well. And my fun little anecdote that would never make it is that part of my payment was this Harvey painting, which is one of the original Dear Harvey portraits that was done by Julie Warren for the original Dear Harvey, and that's Dan asked me at the time, what's something you want? What's something that can mean, be really special to you? And I said, you have like 5 of those prints. Can I have one of those? And he said, sure. And so that's not only our tribute to Harvey that we have in our house and we will forever, but it's also a little gift from Dan. So he's also on the show, which I love.
That's awesome. Thank you. So our last question is, Breakthrough Workshop Theater is all about achieving personal and artistic breakthroughs for every project that you do. And so what did you achieve? What was your personal breakthrough in working on this project and the Stories of Dear Harvey?
What wasn't a breakthrough on this one? No, yeah. This one was full of lots of breakthroughs. Mine was. We always say that we want the breakthroughs to be quantifiable, something that you can know whether or not you achieve. That's sort of ideally the goal. And I had this goal for mine for this, and I wasn't sure exactly whether or not it was going to happen or how I would know if it happened. But I really wanted to. I didn't when I've done this is my 13th time doing Dear Harvey in some capacity, and I had no idea that the original question that was the foundation to create this piece was Dan asking, how can we keep Harvey's message alive for young people? I never knew that. I never knew that was the original seed. And so I was determined, my breakthrough for this was to try to impact, to keep Harvey's story alive for young people in a way that I maybe wouldn't have expected. And earlier I was talking about sort of the silver linings that have come from the situation. Look, when you have I love what we do at Breakthrough Workshop Theater, but this has given us an opportunity to spread the message out to the country, to the world. And Harvey knew that. He knew the importance of spreading the message around. He has his famous quote about reaching that one kid in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And I have a beloved family member who is a teacher in a high school in northern Michigan. And after our first screening on Friday, she reached out to me and said that she had never heard of Harvey before this. And she said it was so moving to her, and she vowed that from now on, all the students that enter her classroom will know Harvey's story before they leave. And breakthrough achieved. To think of all of those kids in Altoona who will now hear that because of this, that just is more than I could have ever asked for. So now everything beyond that is just gravy. It's my breakthroughs. Very much achieved.
Thanks, Ira. Tom?
This was such a gift that Ira and Patty, I feel like, the show too was such a gift that Dan brought, and then this to sit down and write a score for something that I'm trying to think quantifiable, but it was. I just want to say that was. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect healing. The ability to mourn with art, and then also to make something, to be a part of something being made through this media, through Zoom, right? This idea. I mean, if 2019, I would have never known that this is something, right? None of us would. But to be able to walk away and see something that is theatrical and that is 100% moving, and that nothing is going to stop art and nothing is going to stop these messages and these stories that have to be told. That this project, thank you, Ira, I'm looking at you right now, gave me such hope for going forward. And in March and April, I don't think that was quite there. So this was a huge lifting up for me in my life, and a great way to pay tribute to a friend that was just gone far too soon. And yeah, that was it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Patty?
My breakthrough. Well, when Ira and I were first talking about about this project, I had a few ideas, and so I think in one of our conversations, by the way, we should say, Ira, when did you start work on this?
I actually just looked that up the other day. You messaged me the first time on April 16th or so. I think it was like mid-April.
This film happened in 5 minutes, and Ira did every single bit of it. And I think that, so my breakthrough really is that Ira did every single bit of it, because in our first conversations, I was like, oh, here, you can have the play, and then I would take it back. I'm like, okay, you can do whatever you want, but maybe you should do this. And that's an interesting idea, Ira, but maybe it should go over here. And that happened for like 24 hours. And then I sat down with myself and I said, you either give him the play and trust him, or you're going to, restrict him in ways that are not going to be helpful. And so I think my breakthrough was, I hope you'll agree, that I just shut up and let him do it. And my evidence is that it is so much better than it would have been had I done it. I mean, I couldn't have done it. Today, Ira knows this play much better than I do. And there's a section where, for years, there's a section that's been integrated that he did a little sort of editing that's now sort of part of the project. But so that's my breakthrough, was to completely let go. And Thomas kind of understated it here. Like, Thomas and I were, I'll speak for myself. I was depressed. I didn't know how to make art anymore, and I didn't know how to find a way to want to make art or believe in anything. And we had this conversation with Ira, and then Thomas and I sidebarred, and we're talking about, like, we're gonna do this, and I remember we said, I don't know what will happen, but it seemed like maybe Ira's ready to do it, and maybe Ira needs this too. And then here's the thing. So the thing that I need to do, the thing that Ira needed to do, turns out to be the thing that we all need to see and be reminded of, because I couldn't have done it. So that's my breakthrough. I kept my hands off of it.
Well, and I will just say, to quote you, that it, first of all, you giving me that and trusting me with this, not only this one, but over the years, like I say in the intro, is one of the greatest honors. And you gave me confidence. And I didn't have reason to, but I did. And that's the effect that you, Patty, had on me. And for those of you who watch the film, you know that's what the effect that Dan had on you. So earlier when Fernando said that you have been the light, he said, I'm sure you've been the Dan Kirsch for others. I'm here to say that, yes, that is true. And I'm so grateful to have both of you in my life to continue that, and to let's keep doing his work, friends.
Yeah. I was thinking that the whole time you were saying it. So, and little Misty thinks it just goes back to, I think my takeaway from this, my breakthrough, is really just, I'll pull it back to the first time I received the grant application from Breakthrough Workshop Theater. I had no idea who Breakthrough Workshop Theater was. We read the project, and back then, I think, what was it, 6 years we've been funding, something like that. So 6 years ago, our grants were much smaller, and we were giving out much less grants. I think we only gave out like 40,000 that year. And by comparison, last year we gave out 340,000. So if you know like how much we've grown in just that period of time. And so it was really hard to make choices about, we have limited amount of money and we only got so many applications, but you have to, really make decisions about where this funding is going. And remember, we were discussing, well, it seems like their budget is smaller, and so this money will really go a long way in supporting this project. And getting to meet you all that first year, and then just coming back year after year to deliver that check and sit and watch. I remember watching the first year and just being in awe of you all and what you were doing and the beautiful way that you approach theater. And as I've gotten to know each of you more over the years and everyone involved at Breakthrough, I just continue to be inspired by that intergenerational connectivity. And I think as marginalized community members, we're used to adapting our lives and our personal stories to fit or hide. And so the opportunity to just really open up that closet door and be your authentic self, and to do that in a way that connects between generations, in a way that institutionally, especially back during Harvey's time, and still some ways to this day, we're disconnected from different generations of our own community, because we're born into different homes and different households and different lived experiences. And you all really find a way to bring that together in a way that's beautiful, that's creative, that's powerful. And to me, that's a breakthrough. And every year, learning more and seeing how the foundations of Harvey and Christine Kehoe and Sheila Kuehl and Tony Atkins are all, even to this day, like connected to even this moment happening, is really powerful. And so I think that's my breakthrough, is seeing how it's all connected.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your support over the years. We really could not do what we have done. It's not hyperbole to say that. Literally, we would not be what we are without San Diego Pride. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ira. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Thomas. It's been so wonderful spending some time with you and sharing conversation. Thank you for producing such a beautiful gift to our movement and to our community. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you so much.
Have a great Pride, San Diego.
Thanks. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in for Breakthrough Workshop Theater's production of the Stories of Dear Harvey. It's such an honor to be able to work here and know that the proceeds from our festival, from our parade that traditionally happen every single year, are turned into those community grants. And we are the most philanthropic Pride in the world, having given out more than $3 million to LGBT serving organizations locally, nationally, and around the world. COVID-19's changed a lot, and so we won't be able to be together in person this year, but we've been producing more and more shows and programming and education and advocacy events like this that are streaming to you live in your homes, on your mobile devices, and we're going to keep doing that as long as we're all confined by the pandemic. We're really looking forward to bringing you SheFest on July 11th, which is our LGBTQ women-centered event. Can't wait to bring Light Up the Cathedral to your homes. It's our interfaith event that happens at St. Paul's Cathedral, and without St. Paul's Cathedral wouldn't happen. That's July 15th. Our Spirit of Stonewall Rally, where we honor our awardees and talk about the compelling issues that are still facing our community and the work that we have yet to do. That's our Spirit of Stonewall Rally on July 17th. Streaming right to you live. And then, of course, our big major event, Pride Live, will be streaming to you all day starting at 10 a.m. on July 18th. And so if you have appreciated the work that we've been doing, if you like the work of San Diego Pride, consider becoming a monthly supporter at sdpride.org/donate. Yesterday was Give Out Day, and we raised over $35,000 from a record number of donors to the organization. We couldn't do that without you. We couldn't do this compelling work without you. I'm just so excited to bring all of this new content to your living rooms. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you at Pride, and together we rise. Have a great night.